I just wanted to ask one. Whether you have any views, what you might call the Frank Field view of welfare dependency. That one of the things the government has bottled in a way is actually is grasping that problem of whether Lisa and I were at a day political quarterly conference about to come out, really in which, in a sense, the truth came out about the poorest, which was that the Labour government, in a sense, had believed that things like education would trickle down, that wealth would trickle down, but it turned out that it hadn't. There was actually a real problem lurking around the bottom. And the removal of particularly of the education grant for 16 to 19 seems to me completely lunatic. I mean, the single thing that you might want to do, which is encourage orderly persistence at school from that group in their and our future, they've got rid of the bit that had a bit of vision in it. So do any of you have any views about whether this government, it seems to me it has bottled out of rethinking that problem, and whether there are any solutions to it? That clearly, and if they'd had a solution to it, would they have had a better story to tell us? I mean, the story they're telling us is just ogre at the moment, isn't it? Chris,
I think one of the things that one of the hopeful signs from the new government is there might be some good things coming through the universal credit, which is there to replace the other sorts of benefits in the means-tested benefit system. We don't know enough about it. We haven't got the figures. We don't know the details of this. We don't know what the essentially. Essentially, this is designed to try and get people back into work. But if you want to improve the incentives to work, you can do it in two ways. One is to pay more to people in work, and the other is really to pay less to people out of work. There's not much. Those are the harsh facts. I think so far in the spending review, we've actually. It's quite mixed. They are paying less to people out of work, particularly if you're sort of sick, as Lisa was saying, for the employment support allowance, big cuts there. But equally, they've cut quite a lot of the in-work benefits as well, some big cuts into working tax credit. So the relativities are not clear. But I think even...
with respect to both economists here, part of the problem is that this government and the previous government was captured by economic thinking in terms of its welfare policy, in the belief that this all boiled down to sums, whether you're better off or not in work. And the truth is, that it is a tragedy that there are 2.5 million people who have been on incapacity benefit and now moving across to this new employment support allowance, and Labour failed to deal with that problem. But when you go and meet and talk to those people, you realise that their problem is a very small proportion of those people have a problem with work ethic or indeed work incentive financially. A far greater problem with drug problems, alcohol problems, relationship problems, quite complicated social problems that our system finds it hard to deal with. And the truth is, I spend half my time in Oxford working with homeless guys trying to get them back into jobs, and it is deeply frustrating. It takes a lot of time, a lot of support, a lot of resource actually. There's no quick wins, and just simply saying to them, we're going to cut your benefit to make that work incentive even greater, makes no difference whatsoever to those individuals and their life decisions. So I think the real failure of government thinking on this is just to only think of it in economic terms, and not to introduce other forms of psychology and sociology to their thinking about welfare to work.
But I think I agree with that. In fact, we said some of the things in our recent welfare report. But I think the biggest failure is only to think about the role of government. In the sense that, and this is one thing the Coalition are also talking about, the work program, to try and bring in the third sector as well. But it's also communities have to take more responsibility, and individuals have to take some responsibility as well. Because in this environment where the government will be doing less because it just will have less money, we actually have to help. We actually have to chip in. And this is, I guess, one of the things that actually concerns me around the debate around the winter fuel allowances is, can't people see that they should be giving this up and chipping in and actually helping out? I mean, you know,
So
it's not just the government's role.
take Middlesbrough. What does chipping in mean when the local economy simply will not provide the volume of employment for local areas? Jean mentioned the educational maintenance allowance. In Middlesbrough, under Labour was built a fantastic, by amalgamating existing colleges, fantastic further education college. FE, traditionally a Cinderella area, was one of Labour's success stories. Large number of the young people attending that college relied upon a financial incentive to encourage them to become employable by doing courses, vocational courses, at the FE college. Now, a Hayeki would say, you know, the labour market would naturally provide for these people at whatever skill level they acquire. Clearly, that's a nonsense. It was a nonsense when Hayek wrote it, it's a nonsense now. The state needs to step in to provide the educational resource and to provide the incentive for people to actually acquire the skills at which they, in theory, would be employable. Even if in a place like Middlesbrough, the volume of jobs is still likely to
You're only
undershoot.
really, I mean, I agree with that, and you're talking about that case where the market does clearly fail. The concern I have is that the UK welfare system is doing too much for people who it shouldn't be doing things for. I mean, you mentioned the fact that we're redistributing a lot of money from the poor to the rich. We're actually redistributing a lot of money from the rich to the rich. And there is quite clear evidence that actually a lot of the money we're spending on benefits, a lot of money we're spending on services, is actually going to people who could afford to contribute more. Look at the free bus passes. There's studies been done on it, and it's quite clear that the people who are taking it up are the people who could afford to pay for their own transport, or they can, you know, they have other transport available. I mean, but these are the people we prioritise because they vote. And those cases you're talking about, we simply haven't prioritised.